Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. We've got some malicious compliance stories, so let's jump right into them. Starting with our first story by Fournone, how an act of malicious compliance saved my life. A year and a half ago, I was working a restaurant job that was slowly killing me. There's a lot to set up, so bear with me. I am skipping over a lot. I realize now we should have gotten OSHA involved, but I was an idiot and let this all go on for too long. This is not as soft as the last one and has no moment of victory. Setup. Since the previous story about this restaurant, a lot had changed. Not long after that story, I was promoted to management but never fully trained. I had gotten Lucy fired for theft and my wife was the one who replaced her, transferred from another store. This broke a lot of company policies and also probably the law, but the company was short on managers. A new GM came in and Lazy Daisy got the demotion she deserved and would be forced to resign. Before she left, she attempted to get revenge on us, blaming us for what happened, but it failed. Another manager, who is so insignificant I forgot his name, quit and was replaced by an old friend, who my wife and I trusted and treated almost like family. At first, things started to finally be looking up in that terrible restaurant. Then we quickly realized that the new general manager was a full-scale level 10 Karen. General Manager Karen had made me and wife priority targets in her wrath. She quickly became aggressive, vindictive, and malicious at every opportunity. She fired half the staff, trapping some of them to do so, insulting people until they snapped and fired them. She fired one cook after telling me to skip cleaning and get off the clock, and the known neat freak night cook threw a fit, rightfully so, at the dirty line. She fired him, then forced me to work the night off the clock for not cleaning. It was supposed to be my night off. We are at this point critically understaffed. Wife and I's schedules are pushing 80 hours every week. The marriage was in free fall from our stress and the incessant berating from GM Karen. Every moment we had together was usually interrupted by a phone call demanding one of us come in. I had gone from mainly managing to going back to line cook and dish, with my only real managing time being having to come in at 8 a.m. to do soft opens. Unlock the door for the staff, do paperwork, count safe, and help throw truck. Some days I was pushed to as many as 18-hour shifts, 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. the next day. Few days I got breaks. No food during the day besides what I could sneak. Averaging 4 hours of sleep if I managed to steal a meal on my way out the door and not have to cook. If I was lucky, I got a short day or 2 days off the same week. My body began to fail, but I was that idiot too dumb to quit and willing to do almost anything that was expected of me. My wife and I's vacation finally came, and during it I suffered some kind of respiratory failure. The doctors there brought me back with a bill as large as all of our spending money for the trip, citing asthma as the likely cause without investigating. I had found it weird that my activity-based asthma had been triggered while lying in bed and had suddenly resurfaced after years of dormancy, but I paid it no mind. I should have. But this did severely anger me and I started to finally figure I needed to get out of there. Over the following weeks, my lungs would dramatically drop in ability, but I chalked it up all to just simply asthma. After all, that's what the doctor said. On to the story. After weeks of grief for my wife and I's vacation, which included even more insane hours and odd jobs, GM Karen suddenly decided to go on a vacation of her own, lasting a full week. It was the last day of the pay period, and my clockout was in the upper 80s the previous week and upper 90s that week. I was hollow-eyed and barely able to breathe. I still thought it was just my asthma and lack of sleep. On her way out the door, she whipped several cooks into a tizzy and attempted to get them all fired, and then handed me a massive list of chores to do while she was gone. While all of this stuff should have long been done, years of neglect and the months of severe understaffing made all these duties simply impossible to accomplish. Every new hire had been chased off by her and making up for it with ever-increasing overtime. A lot of progress had been made, but there was still months more to do to fix the neglect from the reign of Lazy Daisy. I told her flatly that this list was impossible to do in a week, maybe not even in a month. Then she uttered the words I had not known I was waiting for. She angrily screamed, "If this isn't done, you and your wife don't even bother ever coming back on the day I get back. Do it or else." Before I could even say anything, she rushed out the door to go on her vacation, and I looked down in defeat. The whole of the staff knew I was at a breaking point, and the faces they had been making told me I was not going to survive doing this. I would spend a lot of the week trying my best, but my body was giving up. One day, I slept in the office as it was too late to bother driving home. By the last day of pushing ourselves and the staff to the breaking point, we had accomplished about 1/5 of her list and blew our labor far beyond what corporate allowed. Everyone had significant overtime. As the last day came to a close and I finished the floors around the dish pit, me and my wife looked at the clock. 3 a.m. The meeting, and the moment she returned, 6 a.m. We were both scheduled doubles the next day. 6 a.m. to close, thanks to the meeting. Karen's words were stewing in my head, and if it was not for that sentence, I probably would have slept in the office that night or kept working to finish the list. We decided, you know what? Screw this place. Karen said we shouldn't come back if the list wasn't completed, and, well, it wasn't. So we complied. We left our keys, stole an industrial-sized box of chicken nuggets, and walked out the door. We never came back, just like she said we should. The time clock read about 105 hours. The fallout. The rest of the story is told to us by secondhand. Mainly the family friend and some coworkers at first, but after they quit, we got updates from a relative of the new manager that I happened to be working with. Small world. According to them, after we had left, staff morale had plummeted. The last dishwasher, I was the second to last after the other two were fired, would be brought to his mental breaking point and stormed out the door a few days later. People began to quit left and right. The staff apparently looked up to me and wife since we had stuck through everything with them shoulder to shoulder and in the trenches, unlike other managers like Lazy Daisy and Karen. The state of the store decayed as the downward spiral continued and store revenue went through the floor. We were the straw that broke the camel's back. Last I heard, Karen had an empty store, few employees, and nobody to shout at. And that was before 2020 began to dawn. I'm sure that store hasn't survived this long. My health was still declining but had dramatically slowed. Some days it even felt like it had improved. I thought this was just where my body was going to be and that asthma was what was keeping me down. 2 months after quitting, I collapsed at my new job. My lungs were not working. It was an asthma attack on a level I had not felt since the vacation. I was brought to the hospital by ambulance and discharged in short order as I recovered. Another massive bill and still lost as to why. A week later, I had fallen ill and took the day off. I went to my doctor to get a doctor's note when suddenly they wheeled me into intensive care. The nurse said I was as white as a sheet. My blood oxygen level was so low I should have passed out on the drive. They discovered I had a minor nasal infection that had spread through my entire respiratory system and beyond, heavily entrenched in the lungs. The doctor estimated that this level of infection of that strain would require a number of months. He estimated 7 to 8 of progression and a severely weak immune system. When informed of my previous job, he said that the lack of sleep and constant work was stressing my body to the point where my immune system could not fight off the infection. Despite being out of that environment, the war on the infection was preventing the body from healing. He said I shouldn't have made it, and if I had not quit, he has little doubt I would not have made it. To this day, a year and a half later, My lungs are still weak, but the infection is gone. They may never heal, but I am still around. I have, due to recent circumstances, finally quit restaurants entirely. But that was how some malicious compliance and a walk out the door probably saved my life. If you were in this situation, would you have quit a lot earlier than OP did? Let me know in the comments down below, because I feel like if it was me, I definitely would have. Unless I literally could not survive without this job, which OP might have really desperately needed that job, I probably would have still quit earlier than killing myself and being treated so ungratefully. I would absolutely not be sticking around for that. Our next story is by SentientSlimeColony, Airplane Switcheroo. One of these reminded me of one I had not too long ago. I was going on a long international flight. I typically pick window seats as I can rest against the wall and look out the window. I had managed to secure one for both legs of this flight and was feeling particularly pleased. When I got to my aisle, however, there was a guy in my seat. No problem, people get confused all the time. I told him, "Hey man, I think you're in my seat," and showed him my ticket. He looked at his ticket, then gestures at the aisle seat. "Oh, I guess I'm that one. Doesn't matter, right?" and goes back to listening to music or whatever. I'm pretty steamed because while I know I'm right, I'd also have to make 2 to 3 people get up and shuffle around, and I'd feel like a bit of a dick, even though I know he's the one here. So I just plop down in his seat and pout for a bit until someone comes down the aisle and taps me. "Hey man, I think you're in my seat." My mood does an instant 180 as I get up and tell them, "Actually, I'm not. This guy is," and point to the window thief. "I'll just move to my original seat and you can sort it out between the two of you." The guy looks confused, but window thief now begrudgingly gets up and they start comparing tickets, while I move to my comfortable window seat. I guess there was some kind of print error because window thief and the innocent bystander actually did have the same ticket. So the flight attendants ended up moving window thief a bunch of rows back, which was just the icing on the cake to me. If I paid for a window seat, I'm going to complain until I get the window seat. You went and got yourself a middle or an aisle seat. Sorry, you gotta deal with that. You can't take my seat that I specifically sought out. Our next story is by ScratchAvatar. I haven't seen him. A decade ago, I worked at a warehouse. Big warehouse, served the northern half of Alberta. Several dozen shipments a day, each one several pallets, average 5 feet high. To meet this demand, there were 20 to 30 guys in my position alone, in just our section of the warehouse, and we worked with at least 100 other people. New hires got to enjoy a special interview every week for 3 months, in which a supervisor would politely tell us that we weren't cutting the mustard and would not last through our probation if we didn't speed up significantly. It was great for morale. For 6 weeks, I would hear the same supervisor call out a mispronunciation of my name over the PA. Every time, I would walk into the supervisor's office for my interview and correct him. Think major. Pronounced major versus major. The 6th time he did it, I was sick of correcting him. I walked into the office and calmly said, "My name is Major. I've told you this 6 times now. The next time you call me Major, I won't answer." "What's wrong with Major?" he asked. "Seriously, it's someone else's name." The next week, when my turn came up again and his voice blares out his standard call over the PA, "Major to the shipping office. Looking for John Major to the shipping office." I went about my job. 5 minutes later, he calls again. Again, I ignore him. 20 minutes pass, several more calls. Another supervisor comes out searching for me. "John, Alan's been calling for you a while now. You need to get going." No, he hasn't. He's been calling for John Major. I've told him that's not my name 6 times now. But if I see John Major, I'll tell him Alan's looking. "Alan is looking for you, so let's go." You tell Alan if he wants to see me, all he needs to do is call my name. "What's your name?" He knows. The supervisor walked away and I just kept on working. John Major to the shipping office. I worked there for years. He never needed correcting again. There's nothing really wrong with getting a name wrong. It happens. It's a human thing to do. That being said, 6 mistakes and 6 corrections, you should be able to catch on to it by then. Plus, it would be great for morale if you could show that you can learn from your mistakes and correct that issue. But no, you just kept piling it on and making it worse, and then tried to defend yourself by saying what's wrong with a mispronunciation of your name. Are you kidding me? That's pretty disrespectful. And our final story of the day is by Military Brat 2020. You want a dirty room? Okay. For starters, I'm 18 and just graduated. My family is military, so I won't get a job until our last move, which is thankfully this next one. My brother is 17 and can be a real jerk. He's super picky about everything. From food, his french fries cannot touch his burger, to his room, coming in a bit. We thought he was on the spectrum and got him tested, but he wasn't even close. Which is strange, right? Anyways, in order to earn my keep at home as an adult with no job, I clean the house, sometimes make dinner, etc. My brother, however, has always told me not to touch his things. When I first vacuumed the floor, I had to move so many things just to see it. He got upset and went to our mom, who told me not to touch his things if he doesn't want me to. Cue malicious compliance. It's his choice to have a dirty floor, right? And he doesn't want me to touch everything that covers it? Fine. This whole quarantine, I haven't cleaned his room once. Just yesterday, my mom asked me to clean it. Because I follow the rules, I told her I couldn't. He doesn't want me to touch his things? Fine. Clean it yourself. So I actually find this kind of odd that even though you do chores, you have to clean your brother's room. I don't know if it's maybe a cultural thing or just a me thing, but I would imagine if you have a room, your brother has a room, it's your responsibility and your responsibility only to keep that room clean. And a cleaning chore would be everywhere else, like a public room, like a family room, a living room, a dining room, that kind of thing. But that being said, that's all the time we have for today, so if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know in the comments down below which one and why. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't yet, subscribe and turn notifications on. All of those things help the channel so immensely, so thank you no matter what you did. Whether it was just watching the video, liking, subscribing, whatever you do, thank you so much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you're all having a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time, right here.